Today is 14th of December 2025. It's a Sunday. A few days ago, December 10th, was the anniversary of the death of Alfred Nobel. Alfred Nobel died December 10th, 1896. And he was the one that in his will, before he died, he established the Nobel Prizes. So on the anniversary of his death, the Nobel Prizes are issued, are given out. So, and we saw that this year, 2025, Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Maria Corina Machado leading up to the award of the Nobel Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado, we know that the president of the US, Donald Trump, was interested in getting the Peace Prize, and he has openly talked about it, and world leaders who want to gain his favor has openly talked about nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. But when the Peace Prize came, it was given to Maria Machado from Venezuela, an opposition leader from Venezuela, because of her stance in promoting democracy and in fighting the autocratic tendencies of Nicolas Maduro, the leader of Venezuela. So I want to talk about Alfred Nobel and the origin of the Nobel Prizes. Alfred Nobel was born October 31st, 1833 in Stockholm, Sweden. And as I've said earlier, he died December 10th, 1896 in San Remo, Italy. He died at the age of 63. He was born to, the father was Emmanuel Nobel, and the mother Caroline Henriette Hansel, who later became Caroline Henriette Nobel. They gave birth to 8 children, but of the 8, only 4 survived to adulthood. Alfred had 2 elder brothers, Robert and Ludwig, and a younger brother, Emil. The father had business misfortunes in Stockholm, Sweden, where Alfred was born. And because of those business misfortunes, father now moved to St. Petersburg in Russia. And when he got there, he set up business that involved making explosives and machine tools, and he became successful. So, and that's what later in 1842, the Nobel family moved to join Emmanuel in St. Petersburg. It must be noted that Alfred Nobel's father had a factory that deals with explosives and power tools. The father was an engineer, and the father first taught him the basics of engineering. The father stimulated his interest in the sciences and chemistry. So the work of his father, laid a seed that inspired Alfred Nobel to pursue that course. So that must be noted. Because while in Russia, the family got some money and they were able to afford good education for Alfred, and he had good private tutors. At the age of 16, Alfred was a competent chemist. In 1842, when the family went to Russia to join the father, Alfred was just 9 years old. So at the age of 16, Alfred was a competent chemist, and he was fluent in languages. He loved learning new languages. He was fluent in English, French, German, Russian, and Swedish. And it was reported that in later life he also learned Italian. So there was the Crimean War that was going on at that time, and Alfred's father Emmanuel, with his company, with his factory, he was able to make some money from that war in producing munitions that they would need. But then after the war ended, it was difficult for Alfred's father the factory to transition to peace making equipment. Transition to the war has ended, and so he needed to transition to tools that can be used in peacetime. Couldn't make that transition, so he had to declare bankruptcy. And although before then, in 1850, the father sent Alfred to Paris to study chemistry, and also sent him to the United States as well. While he was studying chemistry in Paris, he met Ascanio Sobrero. Ascanio Sobrero was the one that discovered nitroglycerin. Nitroglycerin was quite an explosive liquid, and it was a dangerous liquid. So Ascanio Sobrero, who discovered it, was quite scared of it. Alfred was interested in the nitroglycerin and wondered if there were safer ways to make it, for it to be used, if there are ways to make it safer, So in 1982, 2 years later, Alfred went back to St. Petersburg, and we know that, just as I was trying to explain, the father's company declared bankruptcy in 1859. So the parents were having challenge in Russia, so they went back to Sweden, which is their home country. So they went with Alfred, back to Sweden, while Alfred's elder brothers Robert and Ludwig stayed back in Russia to manage what was left of the father's business. So back in Sweden, Alfred there's a small lab at the father's estate. So Alfred Nobel was using that lab to carry out experiments, Then he remembered that period was the period of industrialization, and railways were being built, roads were being built, and explosives were needed because some of the roads have to pass through mountains, hills, so they need explosives to bring down part of those mountains that you want to construct the road through, to canals, tunnels. There was need for explosives. So and he remembered nitroglycerin, which his chemistry pal found out while he was studying in Paris. So Alfred now built a small factory to produce this nitroglycerin in 1862, while looking for a safe way to control the explosives detonation. And then in 1863, Alfred invented a practical detonator, that can be used in, when you want to use the nitroglycerin, you need a detonator, something that you can switch on, you can press that will not detonate the explosive material. So in 1863, Alfred invented a practical detonator. And then in 1864, there was tragedy. The nitroglycerin was producing its explosive. So his nitroglycerin factory blew up, and it led the younger brother Emil died in that blast, along with other workers that were working in that factory. But Alfred was quite depressed with what happened, but then he was undaunted, and he built more factories. And then in 1865, he invented an improved detonator, which was called the blasting cap. The blasting cap was the first major invention that he made. He made other inventions, as I have mentioned, but in 1865, when he made the blasting cap, that was the turning point for him. And that blasting cap, brought about the era of modern use of high explosives. And then 2 years later, in 1867, was the big one, where he now invented dynamite. Because all along he knew that nitroglycerin was quite explosive, and was looking for a safe way it can be used. And so by chance he discovered that nitroglycerin can be absorbed by an earth material called Kesigol. Kesigol is a porous siliceous earth, and that it can absorb the nitroglycerin and change it from a liquid to a paste or semi-solid material. So the resulting mixture, when you add nitroglycerin to that Kesigol, resulting mixture was safer to use and safer to handle, and that was a big turning point. He now named that mixture Dynamite. Dynamite from the Greek words dynamis, which means power. So, and was able to get, was granted patent rights in Great Britain in 1867 and in the United States in 1868. Patent rights, if you make an invention, you make a discovery that is unique, the invention and the process used, if they are unique, if they've never been used before, if never been discovered before, you can file for patent rights, so such that you will be the one, if it is granted, it's only you that is allowed to produce that, to use that process and produce that material that has been discovered. It's done in such a way that the person who discovered it can benefit from the proceeds of selling it, from the business of it, and also such that if you have patent over it, you can release information about it. Because even when you release technical information, other people dare not produce it. Patent rights can last for like 20 years, or so, on an average. So Alfred Nobel, he discovered this dynamite and the process of producing the dynamite, and so he got patent rights in Britain and US, and that really helped him getting that patent rights. So dynamite, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, dynamite established Nobel's fame worldwide, and the dynamite was soon used in blasting tunnels, in cutting canals, in building railways and roads. And then he did not relent. In 1875, he invented a more powerful form of dynamite called blasting gelatin, and he was able to get patent rights the following year. At the point of his death in 1896, he had, some say 92 factories, some say more than 100 factories in 20 countries. And these factories were making explosives and munitions. And he had 355 patents in his name. 355 patents in his name. That's a lot, you know. And then at that time, before he died, there were people that were stealing, they were defying the patency to steal his intellectual property and all that. And he went to court and sued those people. You know. So all this was going on. Then something happened in 1888. Remember, he has two elder brothers, Robert and Ludwig. And Robert and Ludwig stayed back in Russia when the family went to Sweden. So Robert and Ludwig, they made a fortune. They discovered oil wells in Russia, and they became really wealthy. And Albert had stakes in the oil company or so that the brothers were running. And so the oil, the money they got from that really made the Nobel's family wealthy. Then of course Alfred made the discovery of dynamite, you know, and also the blasting cap, you know, and he became really quite, Alfred became quite wealthy. The brothers were wealthy. So one of the elder brothers, Ludwig, died in France. When he died in France, a French newspaper, you know, carried the headline. They thought that it was Alfred that has died. They did not know that it's Ludwig, not Alfred. So they now carried an obituary for Alfred, whereas Alfred is still alive. So imagine Alfred opening the newspaper and seeing the headline, "The Merchant of Death is dead." You know, it's not often that you get to see your own obituary before you go. You understand? So Alfred saw the newspaper that said "The Merchant of Death is dead." You know, so describing him as the merchant of death. So at that point, when he saw that obituary, you know, which was the elder brother, not himself, but when he saw it, he felt that, how do I want to be remembered? If I go, you know, will I just be remembered for making explosives, you know, and all that? Is there anything he can do to cement his legacy, so that the conversation will not only be on he made dynamite and explosives? You know, he needed to make a legacy, and that kind of laid the groundwork for him writing a will where he was to bequeath the majority of his fortune on rewarding people who excel in the sciences, literature, and in peace. And one other important thing that happened